The AAA market provides us with so many different and massive experiences each year. Each one is trying to capture our time with their interesting worlds, gameplay, and stories. The AAA market is usually focused on finding new ways to push the graphical limit of the current systems that they can handle. With this, we get experiences that have some really great and beautiful settings, which leaves this gap where people want to enjoy similar experiences that they enjoyed when they were a kid. I understand the notion of always wanting to push forward, but there is something special about the older look and feel of games from those prior eras. Over the last few years, I have really grown to really appreciate the variety in the indie market and what they can bring to the gaming medium. In many cases, indies seem to find niches that players are looking for, and they try to provide those experiences. This really does relate to players wanting more of a classical feeling and play style of older RPGs. A nice selection of indie games that I have played have focused on delivering new games with a classic presentation. Le Grand Legacy is one that I love to bring up, as it's an indie JRPG that aimed to be a product of the PS1 era of JRPGs. This was done through its beautiful cutscenes that focused on imagery and music rather than voice acting, along with having the player interact with an interesting group of characters trying to save the world. The developers looked to Final Fantasy and Shadow Hearts for inspiration in creating something new that was inspired by their nostalgia. This was seen in several aspects of the game, from its story to its gameplay. I experienced a similar execution with another game. Cosmic Star Heroine is a turn-based JRPG that hoped to invoke experiences from games that were presented on the SNES. Made by two individuals, they focused on delivering a JRPG experience with a compelling combat system, humorous writing, and a memorable soundtrack. Both of these games succeeded in what they were trying to bring to the table. These are two examples of teams looking to the past to make something new. There's an audience for it, and I'm happy that developers are trying to keep these types of RPGs alive. There is a distinction to make in that these games are not just products of nostalgia and only relying on that, but rather inspired by that nostalgia to make quality games that stand on their own. I make this distinction because there's a very large amount of indies that are released on a daily basis. With this, quality indies can get lost in the shuffle and never get the recognition it may deserve. I saw this similar inspiration with another JRPG. Shadows of Adam is a JRPG that captures your attention with its retro visuals and keeps you playing with its execution. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my review for Shadows of Adam. Shadows of Adam will have you spending most of your time exploring dungeons, interacting with townspeople, and participating in battles. You will be spending a lot of time in combat. The game works like a traditional turn-based combat system. Each of your 4 party members have an assortment of different moves that they can use. Each of the characters have their basic attack, while also having individual moves that they can pull off. These moves range from different magic attacks like offensive magic, defensive magic, healing moves, and then some interesting ones. I really like the card move, where it was essentially a random attack and where the character would pull a card out from a deck and it was random whether you'd get a card that would do a lot of damage or a little bit of damage. The same can be said for attacks that will cause status effects on your enemies, and some that will even damage everyone on screen. You can use your basic attacks and meditation like moves to build up action points. The action points allow you to do those character specific moves. This is something you will want to keep an eye on in battle, as you always want to have action points so that you can use those specific moves in hard situations, and you also don't want to be in a situation where you don't have any action points. Some of the attacks will actually use up most of your action points. These usually hit everyone on screen or will target one specific enemy and do a lot of damage. But then you will need to think a step or two ahead so that you're not left without any action points for a few turns. There's some strategy involved with the combat, with you trying to be the most efficient within battle. There's this dance of planning and executing your attack so you don't put yourself in a tough spot where you don't have many options. The battles are consistently fun and will net the player with experience points. After you have gained a few levels, you will learn more moves to be able to use within battle. Battles also net you with money, and you can use that money to buy healing items or new equipment to improve your stats. I rather enjoyed the different dungeons you'll be exploring. They had their own unique visual element about them, or something interesting within their exploration. Within a tower level, you'll have the opportunity to fall down floors and be able to find hidden chests. There are many chests to be found in all the dungeons, and they're worth seeking out because they'll provide you with extra money or even secret weapons. Another dungeon that provided some interesting mechanics was the water dungeon. Within this level, you needed to flip switches to raise and lower the water levels to get through different spots. These little things gave the dungeons some visual character and personality while also having something specific to them. I really appreciated these little differences that they could put in to create these distinct environments. The easy route would have been to create a basic structure to these dungeons and then just change the scenery. But here, the dungeons feel more distinct and handcrafted. These dungeons also feature these puzzles where you need to shift around objects to make it so that you can push a magical orb into position. I enjoyed these small puzzles and the exploration as it helped to break up the combat. Another thing to note is that enemies can be seen while exploring, so you will not encounter random battles. If you want to grind for experience points, you can exit the area and return back to it, and the enemies will reset. Overall, I enjoyed the story and the group of heroes. There's a light nature to the story while also providing some emotional moments. You see these emotional moments in some of the flashbacks that are presented to the player. The characters' interactions are mostly funny, with some true standouts like some of the gravestones that you'll encounter. What was written on these really made me laugh. I learned from the developer that the gravestones were written by the Kickstart backers. The game even has a sassy save reminder that pops up right before any major final boss. The game does not have any voice acting, and it definitely looks like and feels like an older JRPG from the SNES era. I do want to mention two flaws that I had with this game. There is one area that has you sneaking around the environment. You have to try to not be seen by the guards, and it wasn't really a huge annoyance as this section was rather short. But the problem I didn't like is that if you got caught by the guards, you then had to restart the section. What would have been better is if you got caught by the guards and then that initiated a battle. I was playing the game on the Switch and I did experience the game crash on me once. Thankfully, the game allows you to pretty much save wherever, so this feature is really appreciated when you're playing in undocked mode. I do want to mention the soundtrack. Like the rest of the game, the soundtrack is very charming. It has some memorable tunes and quality tracks that breathe some life into the gameplay. Here are a few tracks from the game. Shadows of Adam is pretty special. Like other quality indies, it looks to the past to make something new while also helping to keep that era of gaming alive. It felt like a product of love of these types of JRPGs. The humorous writing helped to keep the story interesting and moving at a good pace. I was pleasantly surprised by the humor and found myself laughing at many moments within the story. The characters were likable and I enjoyed the personal nature to the flashbacks. I very much loved the familiar combat system and the frequent battles and the upgrades that I would obtain from them. The soundtrack is equally as memorable, with tunes I would listen to even after I completed the game. I had the opportunity to discuss the game with the developers, and they said that they wanted to make a JRPG that could be easily enjoyed, especially for someone that has a full-time job. And I completely agree with this statement. As someone who enjoys long games, I can also understand how that a long game can look like a rather large undertaking. similar to starting at season 1 of a 10-season TV series. And especially within this gaming medium, there's room for games of different lengths. At the end of the day, players want quality and will show their appreciation whenever they find it. Shadows of Adam provides the quality that you would expect from a big JRPG while giving it to the player in a nice bite-sized amount. Shadows of Adam is about 15 hours, and I would highly recommend you play this. And I hope this isn't the last time we hear from these developers, as I would like to see them take another stab at this genre. They delivered a memorable JRPG, and I'll happily play it again.